Today we're unveiling 30 surprising hacks they use to keep their meat fresh, flavorful, and safe. From salt curing and fermentation to clever use of natural coolers, these off-grid strategies reveal how simplicity can outshine convenience. Let's dive in and discover the remarkable secrets behind the Amish no-fridge tradition. Number 1. The no-fridge tradition. The Amish have long rejected modern fridges, trusting in centuries-old methods to keep beef safe. They believe technology can fail, electricity can go out, and costs can soar. Meanwhile, the wisdom passed down through generations, salting, smoking, drying, and similar techniques, doesn't rely on external power. This off-grid approach has served them for centuries, providing a secure food supply with minimal waste. Number 2. Salt curing basics. Salting remains the most time-tested way the Amish preserve beef. They usually pick coarse sea salt or kosher salt over table salt, avoiding additives like iodine. The process involves trimming excess fat, coating each side generously with salt, and placing the meat in a wooden or ceramic container. Every few days, the meat is flipped, and any liquid is drained. Salt draws moisture from beef cells, leaving bacteria with nowhere to grow. A thorough cure can last weeks, transforming raw beef into a stable, savory product that can endure for months or even years. Number 3. Salt quality matters. The Amish distinguish between different salts the way wine enthusiasts compare vineyards. Some families swear by unrefined sea salt from specific regions because it contains trace minerals that boost flavor and help preserve. Others opt for canning salt, which is fine-grained and free of additives. They avoid standard table salt because iodine or anti-caking chemicals can produce odd tastes or compromise the preservation process. Number 4. Smoking for preservation. Long before electric refrigeration, smoke was the king of food preservation. The Amish still use smokers built from simple wooden structures or repurposed sheds. A small, low fire of hardwood like hickory, applewood, or oak is maintained, releasing a steady stream of smoke around 80 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Smoke dehydrates the surface and bathes the meat in antimicrobial compounds. Done correctly, this method delivers beef that's both safe to store and rich in flavor. Number 5. Controlling smoke density. Amish butchers pay attention to the smoke's color. White smoke suggests there's too much moisture in the wood, so the temperature might be too low, or the airflow is restricted. Thin, bluish smoke usually means the fire's burning evenly and the preservative compounds are at the perfect level. Mastering this balance is one of the biggest challenges for new smokers. Even in Amish communities, it can take years of practice under a watchful elder before someone truly nails this skill. Number 6. Drying in the open air. Drying represents another major route to off-grid beef preservation. Families slice meat or segment larger cuts, rub them with salt or a light marinade, and hang them in well-ventilated areas to let nature do the work. For safety, the humidity must be low enough so mold won't proliferate. If the air gets too damp, they often move the drying operation indoors or finish it near a gentle heat source. Properly dried beef can last over a year while retaining protein density that outmatches fresh meat by weight. Number 7. Jerky versus dried beef. In mainstream culture, jerky often implies thin slices marinated in sugar, salt, and spices. Amish dried beef can be thicker and might involve a hefty salt rub before any optional spices. Jerky is seen as a snack, while dried beef is viewed as a serious staple for cold seasons or lean times. Both approaches remove enough moisture to make bacterial growth nearly impossible. The difference lies in seasoning style and thickness, yielding two very different textures. Number 8. Fermentation magic. Controlled fermentation might sound counterintuitive, encouraging certain bacteria to crowd out harmful ones, but it's a powerful tool. Lactobacillus strains thrive in salty or slightly acidic conditions, lowering the pH to levels hostile to spoilage microbes. The result is tangy, slightly funky beef that keeps well without refrigeration. Some Amish families maintain a mother culture for decades, each generation of bacteria lending a signature flavor to the meat. Number 9. The fermentation barn. Because fermenting beef can produce strong odors, many Amish store it in a small outbuilding. Large vats of brine bubble away as lactobacillus transforms the meat. The smell is intense, so novices might not appreciate it. Yet once you try properly fermented beef, you discover a complex, savory taste that modern grocery meats can't touch. In an era before electricity, this method proved indispensable for winter protein. Number 10. Pressure canning. Many Amish families rely on wood-fired stoves to power pressure canners. While canning might seem modern, the principle is old. Heat the beef to at least 240 degrees Fahrenheit for enough time to kill bacterial spores, then seal it in airtight jars. A can of beef can last for years if stored properly. Canning days are often communal efforts, with relatives or neighbors pitching in to trim, sear, and pack the jars. Once cooled, the sealed jars line pantry shelves. For easy access to ready-cooked, tender beef. Number 11. Root cellars as refrigerators. Digging into a hillside or partially underground space creates a steady temperature zone, perfect for storing preserved foods. Root cellars in Amish territory often range from 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, ideal for shelf-stable beef. Families watch the humidity by placing thermometers or even pieces of produce inside to gauge moisture. If mushrooms start forming on the walls, it's too damp. If apples shrivel, it's too dry. Adjustments like opening vents or adding a tray of water keep conditions right. Number 12. The seasonal advantage. Many Amish families plan major butchering during cooler months, so the outdoors acts like a natural fridge. Processing a cow in January, for example, allows them to salt, smoke, or store beef in naturally low temperatures. In warmer months, they'll rely on underground cellars, quick salting, or even fast canning. This seasonal approach ensures minimal spoilage without needing any electricity. Summertime butchering is rare, done only if absolutely necessary. Number 13. Lard seal method. Submerging beef in rendered fat, often called larding, is a remarkably effective barrier against oxygen. The process starts with collecting trimmed beef fat throughout the year, then slowly heating it until it melts into liquid gold. Straining away particles leaves pure lard that cools into a sturdy seal around partially cooked or fully cooked beef. With no air touching the meat, bacterial growth halts. This method helped explorers like Lewis and Clark, who carried potted meat and crocks of fat for months on their journeys. Number 14. Canned and gravy ready. Some Amish women like to can beef along with onions, salt, and a little pepper. When opened, the jar yields tender chunks and flavorful broth that can be thickened into gravy or poured straight into a stew. It's the original form of instant meal. Just heat and serve. Combined with vegetables from the garden or pantry, it becomes an easy dinner that rivals any modern convenience food, minus the chemical additives. Number 15. Rotation systems. To avoid hidden spoiling items, the Amish label or color code all preserved beef containers with the date of processing. Older jars, salted cuts, or smoked slabs always get used first. This first in, first out system prevents the overlooked moldy item in the back of the shelf. Unlike many modern households that discard up to 30% of their groceries, Amish families typically waste far less. Some estimates say under 5%. Their organization is crucial to staying fridgeless. Number 16. Humidity checks. Modern dehumidifiers don't exist in off-grid Amish homes, so families learn to sense humidity changes. If the storage room feels sticky or smells musty, they might open a window at night or move beef to a drier spot. Simple fixes, like placing a cloth bag of charcoal on a shelf, can lower moisture. An over-humid environment invites mold, while too dry air leads to rock-hard, unpalatable meat. Number 17. Summer heat hacks. When August brings scorching days, preserving beef gets complicated. Many Amish start butchering before dawn so the meat doesn't sit out in the sweltering midday sun. Some rig up straw-filled boxes doused with water to create simple evaporative coolers, dropping the inside temperature by 10 to 15 degrees. Others immerse sealed meat containers in running spring water. By acting quickly and strategically, they can lock in freshness before heat-induced bacteria gain a foothold. Number 18. combining salt and smoke. Pairing salting with subsequent smoking is like a double defense. The salt penetrates the inner layers while the smoke blankets the exterior with antimicrobial compounds. This belt and suspenders tactic can keep beef edible for a year or more. The meat is salted for at least a week, sometimes 2, before a careful cold smoke that can last several days. Rushing these steps increases the chance of a half-cured interior that spoils later. Number 19. Adapting tough cuts. Lean or tough cuts often end up as jerky or dried beef because they respond well to brining and slow dehydration. Fattier sections might be best for canning or lard sealing, as the extra fat can break down and enrich the product over time. Some smaller pieces or trimmings go into soups or bone broths, so nothing is wasted. This deep understanding of each cut's best use underscores the Amish commitment to thrift and resourcefulness. Number 20. Watching for spoilage. Recognizing early signs of spoilage saves money and keeps families healthy. Color changes, like a greenish tint or irregular dark patches, signal possible contamination. A slimy texture or sudden unpleasant odor also raises red flags. Amish parents teach children from a young age to check containers, sniff for off smells, and spot unusual insect activity that may indicate a problem. Quick intervention, rinsing with vinegar or resalting, sometimes rescues the meat, but it's best to catch issues before they spread. Number 21. Barn hanging techniques. In cooler climates, large cuts are hung in barns with good airflow. Natural enzymes in the meat begin breaking down tissues, creating tenderness and developing deeper flavor, akin to high-end dry aging. Temperatures ideally hover between 35 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Too cold and the enzyme action stalls. Too warm and harmful bacteria multiply. Amish families monitor the meat by gently pressing the surface, checking color, and trimming away any over-dried edges. Number 22. The 40-day dry age belief. Some Amish butchers swear by a 40-day age for the best-tasting beef. Over that time, the meat can lose up to 15% of its weight in water, amplifying flavors. Enzymes break down proteins, producing a buttery, almost nutty character. Commercial operations usually age for only 2 or 3 weeks to rotate inventory faster. By holding out for 40 days, Amish households unlock a flavor level that's tough to find at the local store. Number 23. Clay pot cooling. Placing beef in an unglazed clay pot, then surrounding it with damp sand, creates a rudimentary cooler through evaporation. As water evaporates from the clay, heat is drawn away, lowering the internal temperature. This only works well in relatively dry climates, but if conditions are right, it can buy extra days without refrigeration. Some families keep a clay pot system near the house's shady side, refreshing the water as needed. Number 24. Vinegar preservation. Apple cider vinegar is a common pick for marinating beef because of its balanced acidity. Soaking slices or chunks for a few days in a vinegar salt spice mixture lowers the pH enough to kill bacteria. Wine vinegar adds a more complex taste, while white vinegar is the strongest but harshest. If the vinegar is too strong, the meat can become unpleasantly sour, so Amish cooks typically do a small taste test to confirm they've hit the sweet spot. Number 25. Maple syrup curing. In regions where maple sap is abundant, the Amish discovered the antibacterial properties of pure syrup. Its sugar content draws moisture from meat cells through osmosis, while phenolic compounds in the syrup inhibit bacterial growth. Many families add cinnamon or cloves to enhance both flavor and preservation power. The result can taste sweet, smoky, and deeply savory, especially if finished with a gentle cold smoke in an applewood-fired smokehouse. Number 26. Honey glaze method. Honey is another sweet, natural antimicrobial. Warm honey brushed over beef acts as a seal, preventing oxygen from penetrating. Some folks also use a honey salt mix for a short cure, creating a blend of salty sweet flavors. Once dried, the meat keeps a long time because bacteria can't thrive in that thick, sugary layer. Families might hang it in a pantry, away from direct sun, ensuring a stable environment that keeps the honey from melting or attracting pests. Number 27. Emergency kits. Power outages happen everywhere, even in communities that do use electricity part-time. The Amish often keep a stash of salt, string, cheesecloth, and essential spices on hand for immediate preservation if freezers fail. With swift action, they can convert thawing cuts into salt-cured or smoked beef, preventing hundreds of dollars worth of meat from going to waste. This readiness underscores their broader philosophy. Plan for contingencies because modern systems can and do go offline. Number 28. Bone broth. Preservation. Bones aren't tossed away in Amish kitchens. They're roasted and simmered for hours to create nutrient-dense broth. Once strained, some families pour off the top layer of fat and set it aside. Others keep a thin layer of fat on the broth surface as a barrier against air. Properly stored, this broth can remain usable for months. When protein or vitamins get scarce in winter, a well-preserved bone broth becomes a lifesaver, adding richness to soups and sauces. Number 29. Leather bag storage. Before plastic or metal containers existed, travelers depended on leather pouches to store dried meats. Amish artisans still produce these pouches by carefully removing oils from hides, then stitching them tightly. Dried beef placed inside can breathe, just enough to prevent condensation, but not enough to let in moisture that fuels spoilage. Extra coatings of beeswax or even lard can reinforce the bag's protective qualities, making it a reliable method for longer journeys. Number 30. The off-grid reality. By combining salt curing, smoking, fermentation, drying, canning, and other ingenious hacks, the Amish prove that refrigeration isn't the only path to safe, delicious beef. They tailor each method to the local climate, the available resources, and the specific cut of meat. What emerges is a tradition that balances practicality, sustainability, and taste. While outsiders might see it as old-fashioned, these 30 beef hacks show how living without fridges is entirely possible, and often surprisingly efficient, when you trust in nature and time-tested knowledge.